Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now on Saturday, the American Conference Championship game is going to happen between the UCF Knights and the Tulane Green Wave. Who do I think is going to win this game? Let's break it down. Now, UCF is 9-3 and 6-2 in the American Conference to start this season, and Gus Malzahn has done a great job at UCF to keep them as one of the top American Conference programs, and they've had a really good season this year. And in Week 1, they beat South Carolina State 56-10, and that was a good win. Then they lost to Louisville 20-14, and that was a tough loss. They probably should have won that game. They just could not score in the second half. Then they beat Florida Atlantic 40-14 on the road, and that was a good win. Then they beat Georgia Tech 27-10. Then they beat SMU 41-19, so they handled both of them. And then they destroyed Temple 70-13. And then they lost at ECU 34-13. That was a tough loss. ECU's having a pretty good season, though. Then they beat Cincinnati 25-21. That was a great win. Then they won at Memphis 35-28. And then they beat Tulane on the road 38-31. That was a really good win to beat the team that they're having to play against in the conference championship game. Then they lost to Navy 17-14. That was a tough loss. Navy kept the ball away from them and really slowed the game down, and that really hurt UCF. And then UCF beat South Florida 46-39 on the road, and that was a good win, even though they let South Florida come back in the second half. But the biggest key for UCF has been their quarterback play, because John Rice Plumlee, their starting quarterback, has been hurt throughout the season. At times, he has missed some of these games, and some of their performances have been altered because he has not been available. But he's a great quarterback. In the South Florida game, he had 73 yards and a touchdown through the air, and he ran for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. He provides a dimension to the UCF offense when he is in the game that Mikey Keene, their backup quarterback, cannot. He threw for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns against South Florida himself, because he had to come in for John Rice Plumlee, who got banged up in the South Florida game. And Mikey Keene's a good quarterback as well, but he's only a passer and he cannot run, whereas John Rice Plumlee is a dual threat. John Rice Plumlee should be able to play against Tulane, but it has not been completely confirmed. It's more likely that he will. But if John Rice Plumlee gets knocked out of the game like he has been in a lot of games this season, Mikey Keene's going to have to deliver for UCF to get the win. Running back R.J. Harvey at 74 yards and a touchdown, and running back Isaiah Bowser 54 yards for UCF against South Florida. And UCF has good tailbacks. Both of them are very solid running backs, and they really help UCF's offense go. And wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe at 43 yards and a touchdown, and 53 rushing yards, and wide receiver Javon Baker at 51 yards for UCF against South Florida. And UCF has great receivers. They use them in a lot of different ways, sometimes to run the ball, like Ryan O'Keefe had 53 rushing yards against South Florida. And again, both are very talented receivers, and they have even more receivers that are really good. UCF's offense is just really good as a whole. And on the defensive side of the ball, linebacker Jason Johnson had 7 tackles, defensive end Trayvon Morris-Brash had 6 tackles, and linebacker Devontae Brown had 4 tackles for UCF against South Florida. And UCF's defense is pretty solid. They do have a tendency to give up a decent amount of points in some games, but it is a solid defense. Now, on the Tulane side, they're 10-2 and 7-1 in the American Conference to start this season. Willie Fritz has done a great job at Tulane. He's had them having great seasons in the American Conference for most of his tenure. Last year, they had a disastrous 2-10 season, but a lot of injuries affected that season and a hurricane. So now Tulane has all their players back healthy this year, and they're having a great season. And in Week 1, they beat UMass 42-10, and that was a good win. Then they beat Alcorn State 52-0. Then they won at Kansas State 17-10, and that was a great win because Kansas State's having a great season in the Big 12, and Tulane was able to win that game. Then they lost to Southern Miss 27-24, probably a bit of a hangover game after the Kansas State win. Then they won at Houston in overtime 27-24. That was a good win. Houston's a decent team. Then they beat East Carolina 24-9. That was a good win because UCF didn't even beat ECU, but granted, Tulane did play them at home, and UCF had to play at ECU. Then Tulane won at South Florida 45-31. That was a good win. Then they beat Memphis 38-28. Then they won at Tulsa 27-13. Then they lost to UCF at home 38-31. That was a tough loss. UCF played a really good game, and Tulane lost on their own field. Then they beat SMU 59-24. That was a good win. But then Tulane won at Cincinnati 27-24. That was a great win because Cincinnati has not lost at home in 3 years, and Tulane was able to be the first team to knock off Cincinnati on their own field in 3 years. That was a great win for Tulane. and gives them a lot of momentum coming into this game. And in the Cincinnati game, quarterback Michael Pratt at 162 yards and a touchdown and 30 rushing yards. He's a very solid quarterback. He does a lot of things for Tulane's offense. He can run, he can throw. Just a very solid quarterback overall, and he plays so hard. Running back Tajay Spears at 181 yards and 2 touchdowns and 17 receiving yards. He's a great tailback. He's very explosive, and he can also catch the ball out of the backfield, so he's a great running back. Wide receiver Shea White at 62 yards and wide receiver Lawrence Keys at 55 yards for Tulane against Cincinnati, and Tulane has good receivers as well. Tulane has a really good offense. They can run, they can throw. They're very balanced on offense. And on the defense side of the ball, linebacker Dorian Williams had 4 tackles and interception. Safety Lemon Young, the 4th at 4 tackles. Linebacker Nick Anderson had 3 tackles. Safety Larry Brooks had 2 tackles. And defensive lineman Tyler Phillips had a tackle for Tulane against Cincinnati. And the reason why I bring up so many Tulane defensive players is because Tulane's defense is fantastic. That has kept them in a lot of games this season, helped them win so many games because Tulane's defense is really good. Tulane's offense is solid, but their defense is really good, and that's why Tulane's having such a great season. So who do I think is going to win this game? This game is very interesting because like the Mountain West, the American Conference allows the team with the best record in conference to host the conference championship game. So this game is at Tulane. And UCF has already beaten Tulane at Tulane. But an interesting stat is since 2015, the American Conference champion that has the home field advantage, if they lost to the team that they have to play in the conference championship game on their own turf already, they have come back to beat that team in the conference championship game every single time. So that does not spell good news for UCF to go on the road and win at Tulane again. It can be done. Gus Malzahn's a great coach. He has a great team. UCF's offense is fantastic. They have the better offense than Tulane. Tulane's offense has been really good this season, but when UCF's offense is clicking, they have the better offense. But it's all going to come down to if quarterback John Rice Plumlee can play and if he can play the whole game, because if he gets knocked out or he's not able to play, then UCF's offense is probably worse than Tulane's. But UCF's offense is really good with John Rice Plumlee, so that's going to be a factor. UCF's defense is really solid. They've had a good season on defense, but Tulane's defense is even better. Willie Fritz has a great defense. Tulane's defense, if they can slow down UCF's offense, that could be a big factor in this game because Tulane's defense has allowed Tulane to have a 10-2 season. It's fantastic. Tulane's offense, not as good as their defense, but it's still really solid, and I think that UCF's defense will be able to stop Tulane's offense some, but Tulane is going to put up points. But I think Tulane's going to beat UCF 35-31. I think Tulane, they're going to find a way to beat UCF this time around. I'm not just picking Tulane because of that stat that I said earlier. I think UCF can win this game. They've already beaten Tulane once. I think they can do it again. But UCF's been a bit inconsistent at the end of this season. John Rice Plumlee's been in and out of the lineup, and that stunted their offense a little bit. I think UCF's going to put up a lot of points in this game, and I think they're going to play really well. And I think UCF's defense is going to come to play too. But I think Tulane's defense is going to stop UCF's offense just enough, and I think Tulane's offense is going to put up just enough points on UCF's defense, and I think Tulane's going to beat UCF this time around 35-31 in the American Conference Championship game. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think Tulane or UCF is going to win this game and why, and I'll see you next time.